Your car's heater isn't weak by accident. It is warning you about something most drivers miss until real damage starts. When heat takes forever, fades at idle, or never gets truly hot, your engine is running in a harmful zone it was never designed for. Today, I am revealing why weak heat is rarely a blower problem, why it quietly accelerates engine wear, and the simple mistake that keeps millions of cars cold and slowly destroys them. January mornings have a way of exposing problems drivers didn't know they had. The kind of cold that makes you tense your shoulders before you even open the door. I remember one winter when a customer pulled into the shop early, engine running, windows fogged, heater dial cranked all the way to red. He wasn't angry, he wasn't panicked, he was confused. He said the car used to blow hot air within a few minutes. Now it barely got warm, even after 20 minutes. No warning lights, no overheating. Temperature gauge sitting right where it always had. To him, it felt like the heater was just getting old. That assumption is where almost everyone goes wrong. Weak heat feels like a comfort issue, not a mechanical one. Drivers tolerate it, they wear thicker jackets, they assume winter fuel blends, cold air, or age are to blame. Some people even convince themselves it is normal. Cars get older, heaters get weaker, except that is not how heaters work. Cabin heat is not produced by a separate system that slowly wears out. It is borrowed. It is stolen from the engine itself, and when that heat is not there, it means something upstream is not behaving the way it should. Most people never connect those dots. When I asked that driver how he used the car, the story sounded familiar. Short trips, 10 minutes to work, 10 minutes back. Lots of idling in traffic. The engine rarely saw the highway. He told me he had already checked the coolant level himself. It was fine. A shop had even suggested flushing the heater core, maybe replacing it. That would have cost him hundreds, and it would have changed nothing. Here is the part that surprises people. Heater cores almost never fail on their own. They are simple heat exchangers, no moving parts. If coolant is flowing and it is hot enough, they will produce heat. When they do not, it is usually because they are being fed the wrong conditions. Either the coolant is not flowing properly, or it never gets hot enough in the first place. And that second possibility is far more common than most drivers realize. Modern engines are designed to reach and hold a very specific operating temperature, not warm enough, not somewhere in the middle. A narrow window where combustion is efficient, oil works as intended, emission systems function correctly, and yes, the heater blows hot. When an engine lives outside that window, even slightly, everything starts compensating. The computer adjusts fuel, the idle changes, the gauges still look normal, but the system as a whole never quite settles. That is why weak heat is such a deceptive symptom. The car does not feel broken. It starts, it drives, it does not overheat, so drivers assume nothing is wrong. But under the surface, the engine is spending far too much time cold, and cold engines wear faster than hot ones. I have seen this pattern hundreds of times. Cars that take forever to warm up, heat that comes and goes at idle. Heat that is better on the highway, but fades the moment you stop at a light. People blame blend doors, fans, heater cores, even the climate control module. Shops replace parts because that is what the symptoms seem to point to. But the symptoms are lying. They are downstream effects, not causes. The truth is, your heater is one of the most honest components in the entire car. It cannot fake heat. It cannot compensate. It simply reflects what the engine is doing thermally. If the engine is truly at operating temperature, you get strong, steady heat. If it is not, you do not. No amount of turning knobs or replacing vents will change that. What makes this especially dangerous is how modern cars hide the problem. Temperature gauges are damped. They do not show small fluctuations. They are designed to keep drivers calm, not informed. An engine can be running cooler than intended and the gauge will still sit dead center. The computer sees the difference. The emissions system sees it. The oil feels it. The driver does not. Winter magnifies this mismatch. Cold air pulls heat out of the engine faster. Short trips prevent a full warm-up. Idling warms coolant slowly, but leaves oil thick and cold. The heater steals what little heat exists, slowing warm-up even more. Drivers crank the fan higher, unknowingly pulling heat away from an engine that is already struggling to reach its ideal range. It becomes a feedback loop. Weak heat leads to longer warm-ups. Longer warm-ups lead to weaker heat. This is why so many people say their car never really gets warm in winter anymore. It is not imagination, and it is not age. It is driving behavior interacting with a system that was designed under specific assumptions about how the car would be driven. The uncomfortable realization for most drivers is this: weak heat is not just a cabin problem, it is a warning. It is the engine telling you it is spending too much of its life cold, inefficient, and unprotected. Oil does not flow the same when it is cold. Moisture does not evaporate. Fuel does not burn cleanly. Carbon builds. Wear accelerates quietly. By the time someone complains about fuel economy dropping, oil turning black quickly, or rough cold starts that linger longer each winter, the heater has usually been trying to tell the story for years. The driver that morning did not need a new heater core. He did not need a flush. He did not need a fan or a blend door. He needed to understand why the engine was not producing usable heat consistently anymore. And once you understand that, you stop treating weak heat as a nuisance and start seeing it for what it really is: an early signal. One that most drivers ignore until the consequences show up somewhere far more expensive than the dashboard vents. Once you accept that weak cabin heat is really an engine temperature problem, everything starts to make uncomfortable sense. The question stops being, "Why is my heater bad?" and becomes, "Why is my engine not staying hot?" And that is where most explanations online fall apart, because they jump straight to rare failures instead of the common ones that quietly affect millions of cars. The single most misunderstood component in this entire story is the thermostat. Most drivers think of a thermostat as something that only matters if a car overheats. They imagine it stuck closed, blocking coolant, spiking temperatures, triggering warning lights. That does happen, but it is not the failure that ruins heaters. The far more common failure is the thermostat stuck partially or fully open. When that happens, coolant flows to the radiator all the time, even when the engine is cold. Heat gets stripped away before it can build. The engine still runs. It does not overheat. The gauge looks normal, but the engine never quite reaches the temperature it was designed to live at. And because it never fully warms, the heater never gets a steady supply of hot coolant. This kind of failure is sneaky because it does not feel dramatic. The car starts fine. It drives fine. On the highway, you might even get decent heat. At idle or around town, it fades. In cold weather, it can disappear entirely. Drivers assume winter is just harsher this year, or that their car is getting old. In reality, the engine is being robbed of heat every second it runs. What makes this worse is how modern engine management hides it. The ECU will enrich fuel slightly to keep the engine stable. Idle speed may increase. Emissions systems work harder. The oil takes much longer to reach its ideal viscosity. None of this triggers a warning light. From the driver's seat, everything seems acceptable. From the engine's perspective, it is living in a permanent warm-up phase. Engines hate living there. Cold operation increases fuel dilution in oil. Moisture from combustion never fully evaporates. Acids build. Carbon forms faster. Piston rings do not seal as well. All of this happens while the driver focuses on the heater knob, not realizing the heater is just the messenger. Thermostats aren't the only contributors either. Driving habits play a massive role. Short trips are brutal. If your commute is 10 minutes or less, especially in winter, your engine may never reach full operating temperature. Ever. Each start dumps extra fuel into the cylinders. Each shutdown traps moisture. The heater barely warms because there simply isn't enough heat to steal. Idling is another common culprit. Many people idle longer in winter thinking they are warming the car. In reality, idling warms coolant slowly, and oil even more slowly. You can sit for 10 minutes and still have oil that is thick and contaminated. Meanwhile, turning the heater on full blast during idle pulls heat away from the engine block, delaying warm-up even further. It feels good in the cabin, but mechanically, it is counterproductive. Coolant condition matters too. Old coolant loses its ability to transfer heat efficiently. Air pockets from improper bleeding reduce flow through the heater core. Mixed or incorrect coolant types can alter heat transfer properties. None of this stops the car from running, but all of it reduces heater performance and prolongs warm-up. What is dangerous is how often these issues stack. A slightly lazy thermostat combined with short trips and aggressive cabin heating can turn a healthy engine into one that rarely leaves cold mode. The heater becomes weak not because it is broken, but because it is being asked to do the impossible. This is where many drivers get misled by partial fixes. They flush the heater core and see a small improvement. They replace a blend door actuator and get slightly better airflow. They think the problem is solved, but the underlying issue remains. The engine still runs too cool. The wear continues. The heater performance slowly degrades again. I've seen engines with perfect compression and clean internals that still suffer accelerated wear simply because they spent years operating below ideal temperature. Oil analysis tells the story clearly. Elevated fuel dilution, high moisture, additives depleted early. When you ask the owner about winter driving, the answer is always the same. The owner says it never really gets warm. This is also why some cars suddenly blow great heat after a long highway drive. Sustained load finally pushes the engine into its proper temperature range. The heater feels amazing. Drivers think the problem fixed itself. Then they return to city driving and the heat fades again. That swing is a massive clue, but most people do not know how to interpret it. The heater is not failing randomly. It is responding accurately to engine temperature behavior. And here is the part that should make you uneasy. Every mile driven with an engine that is too cold counts as high wear operation, not catastrophic, not immediate, but cumulative. Timing chains stretch faster, oil control rings gum up, carbon accumulates on valves and pistons, fuel economy drops subtly. Emission systems clog sooner, all while the driver shrugs and turns the fan up another notch. Weak heat is one of the earliest warnings you will ever get that something about your engine's thermal life is off. It shows up long before check engine lights, long before rough running, long before expensive failures. But because it feels like a comfort issue, it gets ignored. The real problem is not that heaters stop working. It is that engines stop reaching the conditions they were designed for, and the heater is the first thing honest enough to tell you. Which brings us to the most important part. Knowing this is only half the story, because fixing weak heat the wrong way can make things worse. And fixing it the right way does not involve tearing your dashboard apart or throwing parts at the car blindly. The difference between those two approaches is what decides whether your engine simply warms you up or slowly wears itself out every winter you ignore it. By the time most drivers finally complain about weak heat, the engine has been sending warnings for months, sometimes years. The tragedy is that the fix is often simple, inexpensive, and preventative, but only if you understand what you are actually correcting. Act 3 is where everything comes together, because this is where weak cabin heat stops being an annoyance and becomes a decision point. The first thing that must be said clearly is this: Fixing heater performance is not about chasing hot air. It is about restoring correct engine temperature behavior. Every proper fix works toward that single goal. Start with the thermostat, because it is the gatekeeper of heat. A thermostat that opens too early or never fully closes is the most common cause of chronic underheating. And here is the part that shocks people. Thermostats do not need to be broken to be bad. Many drift out of calibration slowly. They begin opening 5 or 10 degrees too early. That is enough to ruin heater output without ever triggering an overheat condition. Replacing a thermostat is often the single biggest improvement you can make for both heat and engine longevity, yet it is one of the least suspected repairs because nothing feels obviously wrong. Once the thermostat is correct, coolant flow must be addressed. Air trapped in the cooling system acts like an insulator. It disrupts circulation through the heater core and causes temperature fluctuations that no amount of fan speed can fix. Improper bleeding after coolant service is incredibly common. Some vehicles require specific bleed procedures, special screws, or even vacuum fill tools. Skip those steps, and you are guaranteed inconsistent heat. Bleeding the system properly often restores heater performance instantly without replacing a single part. Coolant condition matters more than most drivers realize. Old coolant does not just protect against freezing, it carries heat. When its chemical balance breaks down, heat transfer efficiency drops. Sludge forms, scale builds. Heater cores partially clog internally long before they fail completely. A proper coolant exchange, not a quick drain and fill, can dramatically improve heat output and stabilize engine temperatures. Mixing coolant types, a common do-it-yourself mistake, can quietly sabotage this entire system. Now we address habits, because even a perfectly functioning cooling system cannot overcome bad routines. Short trips are the silent killer. If your engine never runs long enough to reach full temperature, no mechanical fix will fully solve weak heat. This does not mean you need to change your life. It means you need to compensate. One longer drive per week can make a measurable difference. Sustained operation allows moisture to evaporate, oil to stabilize, and coolant to circulate properly through the heater core. Then there is idling. Long idles feel comforting, but they delay warm-up far more than gentle driving does. Engines warm fastest under light load, not while sitting still. The smartest approach is a brief idle, just long enough for oil pressure to stabilize, then driving gently until full temperature is reached. During those first minutes, keep cabin heat low. Pulling heat from a cold engine only prolongs the warm-up phase. This is where many people unintentionally sabotage themselves. They blast the heater immediately, then complain that the car never gets warm. The heater is not failing. It is doing its job too well, stealing heat before the engine can build it. Let the engine warm first, then enjoy steady heat instead of chasing lukewarm air for half the drive. There are also things you should not do. Flushing heater cores aggressively with harsh chemicals can damage internal coatings and seals. Using stop leak products often clogs heater cores permanently. Installing higher temperature thermostats without understanding the engine design can cause overheating and emissions problems. These shortcuts create expensive consequences down the road. When everything is working correctly, the difference is unmistakable. Heat comes on faster. It stays consistent at idle and at speed. The temperature gauge behaves predictably. Fuel economy improves slightly. Oil stays cleaner longer. Cold start noises diminish. The engine feels calmer, more settled, more willing. These are not coincidences. They are symptoms of an engine finally operating where it was designed to live. Here is the deeper truth that most people never hear. Engines that never reach proper temperature do not just suffer in winter. They wear faster year-round. Carbon accumulates. Rings stick. Timing components stretch. Emissions systems clog. Oil degrades early. All of that happens quietly, mile after mile, while the only visible complaint is weak heat. That is why mechanics pay attention when a customer mentions poor heater performance. Not because they care only about comfort, but because they care about thermal behavior. Heat is data. It is one of the few feedback systems drivers experience directly. Ignore it, and you ignore the engine health. Once you understand this, you stop asking, "How do I get hotter air?" and start asking, "Why is my engine not staying hot?" That shift changes everything. It turns a seasonal annoyance into a long-term maintenance advantage. Most engines that fail early did not fail because of one catastrophic mistake. They failed because of years spent operating slightly out of their ideal range. Weak heat is often the earliest clue that something is drifting. If your car struggles to warm the cabin, it is not just telling you about comfort. It is telling you about wear, efficiency, and longevity. Listen to it now, while the fix is simple. Because once engines start wearing from chronic underheating, the heater will be the least of your concerns.